Our first reading is from Genesis 1, verses 26 to 31. Then God said, "Let us make humankind in our image, according to our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the wild animals of the earth, and every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth." So God created humankind in his image. In the image of God he created them. Male and female he created them. God blessed them, and God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth, and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves upon the earth." God said, "See, I have given you every plant yielding seed that is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree with seed in its fruit. You shall have them for food, and every beast of the earth, and every bird of the air, and to everything that creeps on the earth, everything that has the breath of life, I have given every green plant for food." And so it was. God saw everything that he had made, and indeed it was very good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the sixth day.
Right, we're good. So you're recording. Okay. Just thought I'd check. I've been thinking over the last week that this story of creation, of being created to be creators, is a paradigm shift. What do I mean by that? It's a different way of looking at the world to what many of us have grown up with and become familiar with. It's not new. As I said a couple of weeks ago, the story really does not begin at the beginning. Oh, sure. As I said a couple of weeks ago, the story really does begin at the beginning. So if it's not new, then how's it different? In some ways, it's a little like a child learning that Santa Claus is actually mum and dad. Nothing's changed about how our Christmas presents have arrived under the tree. It's just that we see the process differently. For some kids, it's an aha moment. For others, it's a disappointment, the loss of a fantasy. And for others, it's just carrying on from one moment to the next. Information filed and life continues. Now, I'm not suggesting that our understanding of our faith is some kind of fantasy we need to divest. It's simply an example of how our view of the world can be changed with quite simple ideas that were in front of us all along, but that we hadn't noticed in that way before. I have to be honest with you when I say that I've not ever thought about my faith in this way before. This is as new to me as it likely is to you. What I realised in the middle of all this is that I'm immersed in that paradigm shift. I'm breathing it, I'm living it, and the temptation is strong to think that everyone around me must be doing the same thing. And of course, that just isn't the case. Think about the disciples living with Jesus, ministering with Jesus, performing miracles with Jesus. They spent 3 years full-time with Jesus, and they still hadn't wrapped their heads around what he was saying and doing, even after he rose again and fed them fish on the beach. I've preached this created to be creators thing twice for 20 minutes on a Sunday. The amazing thing is that anyone gets any of it at all. So, what to do? To begin with, I need to slow down. I genuinely believe that this way of thinking about our faith, of approaching how we talk about our relationship with God and with each other, is potentially world-changing. I say potentially, because if I rush off and leave everyone behind in my eagerness to reach the end point, there's unlikely to be much changing going on. So I slow down. I talk about the ideas in bite-sized pieces. We think about it together and hear each other as we process our thoughts. When God gave the man and the woman dominion over every living thing, there was no suggestion that everything had to be ordered in rows on the day. In fact, there's a sense that the idea of dominion was less about order and structure than it was about love and care. Look after these good things I have created seems to be the underlying principle. No rushing about understanding and analysing, rather an awareness of nurture and giving attention to. Think of a bonsai master creating a bonsai tree. The work continues day after day. Love and attention are given to training and shaping the tree, knowing that the task will never be finished. It's that same sense of love and attention that God applied to creation and that God calls the first people to continue. This is where I want to dwell in the moment, as it were. Creating is the ultimate act of love. It may not always feel like it. I'm tired and dinner needs cooking and I don't really feel like it. And setting my feelings aside and preparing that meal, I don't want to prepare. I display love for myself and anyone else who may eat with me. It may not seem very loving to slap some baked beans on toast and call it dinner, but it is. Pausing to listen to the world around us is an act of love. One of my purposeful creating moments this last week was to stop and listen to the birds calling to each other. It was a beautiful moment and refreshed my soul. Sharing a moment with a grieving person on the other end of the phone is a creative act of love. Knitting a bonnet for a child is a creative act of love. Preparing the soil for the next season's crops is a creative act of love. Holding the hand of a shut-in is a creative act of love. Accepting our weaknesses and frailties and those of everyone around us is a creative act of love. And then all of these creative acts of love flow from the one who created us in his image and saw that we were good. I think that's pretty cool.
Our second reading is from 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verses 1 to 8a. If I speak in the tongues of mortals and of angels, but do not have love, I am a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. And if I have prophetic powers, and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have all faith, so as to remove mountains, but do not have love, I am nothing. If I give away all my possessions, and if I hand over my body so that I may boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing. Love is patient, love is kind. Love is not envious or boastful or arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoices in the truth. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends.
Here's another way to think about all this. 1 John 4:16 tells us that God is love. Genesis 1 shows us that in the ultimate act of love, God created the universe, the earth, and everything in it. So we could say that love and creation are inextricably combined. Creation could not happen without love, and love is made real in the creation. I want to emphasize here that none of this creation stuff I'm talking about is in any way new. What is new is the approach we're taking. It's a little like working out geometry from first principles or learning to build a house without any prior knowledge apart from how to swing a hammer. Now, to be fair, if that sounds difficult, I'd be inclined to agree with you. Instead of just saying, believe in Jesus and you'll be saved, we're going back some steps and trying to understand why are we saved when we believe in Jesus. I think maybe it's like when you build a house, you need to put in a good foundation. Jesus is absolutely central as the rock on which our foundation is laid. Then we put in the footings and prepare the concrete base that goes on top. The thing we need to remember is that no matter how good the rock is, if we don't get the rest done well, the house will still have the potential to slide off the rock in the event of an earthquake. With that said, I want to explore some of those footings in the form of creation as love. First of all, verses 1 to 3 from our reading in 1 Corinthians. Allow me to paraphrase them in this way. I can be as creative as I like, make things, say things, do things, and without love infusing every little part of what I do, I'm wasting my time. Just as God's motivation to create was love, our motivation also needs to be love. I've already defined a creator as someone who adds something good to the world. I think it's important to hold that definition close when we think about love. There can be a temptation to think that simply doing is a creative thing that should fit the bill. I found myself sliding that way. But what if love is a necessary part of creating good? I'm in a way thinking out loud here. You'll probably get a lot of that over the next few months. What if an essential ingredient for all good creating is the liberal application of love? I'm imagining a mechanic peering over a vehicle, looking to effect a repair, and the love for the task results in a good job being completed. Or a hospital visitor sitting with a sick person, and their love for that person enabling that creative act of comfort and encouragement. And this is where we find the next part of our reading so enlightening. Love is patient. The act of creating requires patience. I think we all know that, even when we're tempted to rebel against it. The act of creating is kind. Yes, creating can involve breaking something down in order to build something else in its place. But there's no sense of hatred or disgust in that process. It's moving resources from one point to another in a way that will make the world a better place. The act of creating is not envious or boastful or arrogant. It has no need to be any of these. Creating is adding a gift to the world. It sees hope and possibility. And out of that hope and possibility comes generosity and freshness. The act of creating isn't looking to twist or break the world. Rather, it gifts the world with a new way of understanding, a vision of how the world can be transformed into a new heaven and earth. The act of creating lays out vistas of hope and endurance. And I just know that some of you are listening to this thinking, what does any of that have to do with me making cheese rolls on a Wednesday morning? To begin with, I struggled to avoid a trite or arrogant sounding response to a question like that, until I thought back to the need to slow down. Maybe the best answer is to ask if you made the cheese rolls with love. Because if you did, then all of the rest just kind of flows on from that. You may not see it, you may not feel it, but as you create with love, it just happens that way. And you know what? I think that's pretty cool too. We pray. God, who created with love and who continues to create with love, we welcome your presence here with us today. We confess that oftentimes we just want to get on with life, or at least let life get on with us. So much of life can feel like hard work, and we want to climb off the treadmill. Help us to find your creative love in the midst of our struggles. Help us to creatively rest where we need rest, and seed goodness when we're ready to move. Teach us to create with love, in your love. Amen.